Welcome to the Nerdlore podcast, where we talk stories, theories, and lore. I'm one of your three hosts, Shiny Shoes.
And I'm Slipshock.
And I'm Crashstarling.
This is episode 2, and today we're going to discuss the political landscape of Dragon Age. And I'll be your host today. Now, when it comes to Dragon Age, I kind of feel like there are a lot of things we can get into, and today we're just going to go a brief overview of a lot of the important players in the landscape. I'll start out with the Tevinter Imperium, because that was one of the first real rises to power that the humans had in the land. So the Tevinter Imperium, they came in, and their belief was that magic was what determined if you were worthy. They based their entire society on it. Their whole thought was the most powerful mage was the most valuable to the entire community. They were led by what's known as the Imperial Archon, and they had a court of magisters. Their religion was for the old gods, and they favored the old gods. When we talk about them, their history is one that they were in the most power in the land at one point in time. They had a very powerful army. They were the mages that literally could do as they want as they went through. But with all great societies, as they began to grow and continue to do things, they did something that changed the way that the entire world of Dragon Age went for eternity. They were, hypothetically, the cause for Darkspawn. And we're going to talk about Darkspawn as we go later on to the game. They learned that their magic could be enhanced through lyrium. And lyrium, if you look about it, it is the blood of what is known as the Titans. Basically, the blood of the Titans. Now, when the Tevinter Imperium came about, with that caste system, as they had lords, they encountered humans first and then elves. And they believe elves were lowborn. So they were the first to really enslave the elves. When they did so, in order to create the first Darkspawn, the mages became powerful. And they're like, you know what? We're going to enter this area called the Fade. And the Fade is where demons live, and the old gods live there as well. So one of the Imperial Archons was like, watch this. So he sacrificed like 200 elves, and he took almost all of the lyrium that they had to physically enter the Fade. When this happened, they touched the Golden City and brought a taint upon it, which is what is said to release the first Darkspawn. This is what everybody outside the Tevinter Imperium believe. They say, hey, this was the moment that Darkspawn was released upon our land. Now, eventually, as we go on, the armies of the Tevinter Imperium, they've died down because they don't hold favor anymore. Everybody outside of the Tevinter Imperium doesn't like them. They have a caste system, so you have highborns, and they go Altus, then Latians, Praetari, Sleepers, and then Scabs, and that's kind of how they rank themselves. And then the lowborn, you have the Freed, the Libertari, and then the Servus Publicus, which is basically slaves. They are one of the few places that don't practice the word of the chantry in the way that everybody else does. Everybody else is like, hey, we follow the Maker. And outside of the Maker, you had Andraste, and the Tevinter Imperium was bad. We don't like magic. Magic is a blight on the world. Well, they have their own version called the Imperial Chantry, and it's focused there and as we go. Now, one thing that I thought was cool about the Imperial Tevinter, these people legitimately used to ride on the back of elephants into battle. They tamed Dracolisks. And they align themselves with the dwarves. Now, we'll talk about the dwarves later, but the thing that I look at the most, the dwarves are pretty much, they'll fight with anybody. They will align themselves with anybody. They're pretty much, hey, if you're cool with me, I'm cool with you. So outside of the Tevinter Imperium, there are two massive golems, like giant golems, that the dwarves actually made. And that's what guards the outside of the Tevinter Imperium. So when you look at that, their society believes in magic, which is very important when you look at how everybody else views magic and how they all see them.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing we're going to. In another episode, we'll talk about the different circles of magi and what that actually means. But for right now, just know magic is what's important here.
Magic must defeat magic.
I was about to say,
Magic defeats everything.
you ever had a moment where you're in social studies class and the guy is talking about history and explaining all of these parts, like all these interconnecting parts with no context? I don't know much about Dragon Age.
Uh-huh.
But I just got that instant flashback to like, what?
And that's how it is. So that's a good place to start. Is there because what happened there changes what happens throughout the rest of the history of Dragon Age, because that is a main reason for what's going to go on. Next, we'll move into the Chantry. So I'm going to tell you about the Chantry, which this is the dominant religion in Thedas. The Chant of Light is its teaching, and it's written by Andraste for the profit of the Maker. So I said two names there. The first one is the Maker. That's basically their version of God. The Maker, fun fact, the creators of Dragon Age said that they will never confirm or deny if the Maker actually exists. They will never confirm or deny it. So the only person, you'll have people that say, hey, that I've been touched by the Maker, I have had visions of them, which is when Andraste comes in. Andraste was known as the Chosen One. And she went on a crusade. They call them the Exalted Marches. A little bit about her: when she was little, she and her sister were close together. One day, the sister goes out into the woods in the middle of the night, drawn there by lights, and the next thing you know, Andraste's found in the woods where she was brutally murdered. So, we don't know what happens. There's no history to tell us exactly what happened there. Now, the goal of the Chantry is to spread the chant of light. Their teachings say that humans are at the top of the pyramid, and any non-humans need saving. Everyone accepts the Maker will return to the world to its former glory. But we shouldn't be using magic. Magic doesn't bring it there. So Cordelius Dracon is the first to actually formalize the religion. He's another age from Farmland. Just know that that's the first one to do it, and they created the Inquisition. If you remember, the third Dragon Age is actually Dragon Age Inquisition. So they have a couple of groups inside them that are actually really powerful. They have the first is the Templar Order, and the Templars are individuals that are there, and they're like, hey, if you're using magic wrong, we're going to smite your ass. Then you have the Seekers of Truth, and there is a miniseries called The Seekers. There's a book about the Seekers. Basically, they are, for lack of better words, the muscle behind the Chantry. They get things done.
So they are the bodyguards.
Or
Bodyguards, police, assassin, secret police.
Secret Service.
They are the muscle. If you want the strong warriors, that's where they come.
Oh, okay. I bet. Okay. All right.
Now, there are 4 principles that the Chantry goes by. And if you are subscribing to that religion, here's what they are. Magic is corrupting influence on the world. That's their first principle. Magic is corrupting the world.
Magic is bad.
The human sin of pride destroyed the Golden City and created Darkspawn.
I'm sorry.
So remember when we talked about when the Teventers went into the Fade? Their religion is built on that was bad. Andraste was the bride of the Maker, and we should remember her.
Okay.
And humankind has sinned and must ask for forgiveness. Now, when you look at that, basically, a lot of what they're saying there is, hey, we didn't like what the Teventers did.
Mm-hmm.
Magic is bad. Andraste is the Holy One. Now, there will be time later to talk about Andraste in another podcast, but just know Andraste was known as a very enigmatic figure.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the game goes around the cult of Andraste and following her teachings. There's a point in the game where you actually go and find Andraste's ashes, and oddly, the ashes have healing properties. So, we're not sure what it is. Now that we've talked about the religion, let's move to another part of the world, the dwarves. Now, the dwarves, they are stocky, they live underground, they're skilled builders, and they are by far probably the most technologically advanced society out of everybody there. Now, they used to, back in the day, they lived in these things called taigs, which were massive underground cities. Just absolutely massive. There used to be 12 of them. But
So he was playing The Sims before The Sims was cool?
they were playing Super Sims.
Perfect. I like
They
these guys.
had the taigs, and they were all connected through a thing called the Deep Brooks. The problem was, the Teventers took that old stroll into the Fade, and they unleashed Darkspawn onto the world. Darkspawn came from underground. So the first group to feel the effects of the Darkspawn were all the dwarves. Because the Darkspawn just were down there with them. So they lost a large majority of their taigs. Because they were overrun with Darkspawn. Also, with the Darkspawn spreads the taint. With that, it's basically death. It's death incarnate. Anything living, it touches. Unfortunately, because the dwarves live so close to that, their society is in danger. Because the dwarves are becoming infertile because of it.
Oh.
So they're having troubles to recreate their actual society because, hey, we can't have kids. So they have actual dwarves that are legit just like, hey, you can have kids. I need you to go out there and have kids. And that's what they do. So that's some of them. The higher born women, like, if you are able to have children, that is considered a blessing. The dwarves also have no connection with magic. Dwarves can't perform magic. They can't really sense. And even more so, the Fade is considered like a dream. When people talk about the Fade, there are individuals that can enter the Fade in their dream. And I know you look questioning because I said, hey, somebody walked into the Fade earlier. Think about that. Someone moved into the actual Fade with a physical form. There are a bunch of people who can go to the Fade in a dream. But the dwarves don't dream.
So there's a lot of dark magic going there for the physical body to get in there?
Correct. Well, I told you they killed like 200 elves just to get there.
You know.
The dwarves don't dream, but they do have what's called stone sense, which they don't do anything about it in the games, but the dwarves, while being deep underground with no map, no light, no nothing, they can find their way home. They don't need maps in the underground. They have what's called stone sense.
So they got mental GPS.
Right. So I was about to say, is it like a GPS or is it like...
It's more like just a feel. It's like a feeling. Like, hey, this is the way I need to go to get back home.
Oh, okay. So they're like birds. Got it.
Yeah, like migration.
Okay.
The dwarves were in the land before we got there. So the dwarves and the elves actually were at war for a very long time. And the elves are actually what drove the dwarves underground. We don't have history from back when the dwarves were above ground, because all of that's been erased. So all we know is about their time underground, and we know it's the elves that drove them there. The dwarves have been allied to the Teventer Imperium since the beginning, because the Teventer Imperium trades with them. And that's what they need. So we talked about they had all these massive cities. Well, the massive cities have dwindled down to about 3. And the dwarves need that trade to stay alive. And Tevinter's like, hey, we'll keep trading with you. So dwarves like, okay, whatever you want, buddy. I've got rocks, I've got gems, whatever kind of stuff you would like. They're surrounded by the Deep Roads area. And if you've ever played a Dragon Age game, the Deep Roads are the absolute worst. It's long stretches of long corridors of rock, filled with darkspawn, no place to sleep, no place to heal. It is literally just a nightmare.
Sounds like a lot of XP farming.
If you live, that's the only problem. If you actually live when you get through there. As the dwarves go, one thing that they talk about is that your goal as a dwarf is to strengthen the stone. So their religion is stone. And if you do great things, you strengthen the stone.
Mm-hmm.
If you do dishonorable things or poor practices, you and your family have weakened the stone. So the stone is their religion. It's the foundation of their society. They believe in the stone. So much so that as a dwarf, for you to leave the Deep Roads or leave the underground and to live topside, it's like you're excommunicated. They're like, you've abandoned the stone. And some dwarves actually believe if you go outside, you will fall off the earth. They believe you'll just float away.
Oh, God. They're like worse than flat earthers.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right.
Gravity doesn't exist. If you leave out, you...
So the dwarves, they have a bunch of people who did great things for the stone. They're called paragons. I don't want to get into all the paragons now, but there's one paragon that I feel like you have to talk about, and it's Caridin.
Mm-hmm.
Caridin invented the golems. And the golems are these mechanical rock structures that fight. Think of just a big stone human that just beats everything into the ground. Think of an army that doesn't need to eat, doesn't need to sleep, and all it does is destroys. It's made of rock, so it's hard to destroy.
You said there was 2 of them, didn't you? Or is there more?
There were a lot more. There were 2 massive golems built for the Tevinter Imperium. It was a gift from the dwarves.
Also, there's 2 oversized golems, and then there are like a bunch of like
human size, basically.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Those golems were one of the things that really helped the dwarves for a time being, because even without the ability to reproduce, those golems could still win wars for you. So much so in Dragon Age 1, you get the opportunity to recruit one of the golems. That thing was probably one of the best tanks you could get in the game. Now, I told you they only have a couple tags left, so I'm not going to go over 12, but the last 3 are Orzammar, Kal Haral, and Kal Shirak. And until just recently, they thought Kal Shirak was gone. They hadn't heard from them in years, hundreds of years. But they got an expedition there and made it all the way there, and they found the dwarves there living, alive and fine, just no way to get out, no way to talk to anybody.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I'll go over last with the dwarves is they are very, very good at military. They're very strong military strength. They had a army called the Legion of the Dead. The Legion of the Dead, they say one thing: we're already dead. So they will go and fight battles that are losing battles. Hey, we're already dead. It doesn't matter. And they fight with a ferocity, and just think, if you have nothing to lose, do you have fear? True. Whereas myself, I'm not going to jump across a ravine to fight someone because I have fear. They do not. Because again, I'm already dead. And
so,
yeah, go ahead.
Is that a mindset they have, or is that like a type of necromancer?
It's a mindset. It's a mindset. Because again, remember, the dwarves can't do any magic. No magic whatsoever. They are...
They could have been cursed. That's what I was asking.
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like this is just a form of like mob mentality almost.
Correct. Yeah, but they're some of their best warriors. So a big thing is, think about if you have done something and your family has weakened the stone. So you're looked down upon in society. And then you say, you know what? I'm going to join the Legion of the Dead. And I'm going to make my family proud. And I'm going to make people proud of me by walking into the deep roads with 2 axes and killing as many darkspawn as I can until I eventually die. That's how I help society. Now, not to say that every single one of them are outcast from society, because they had great generals in the Legion of Dead and people that were very high known, just that, hey, I want to go kill things. So it's not bad. But again, that's another way to redeem yourself. And to them, the religion, the strength of the stone is everything. So if I have failed my family, how do I make them kind of happy about me again? One thing that I looked up about this that I thought was really cool, I always didn't know. I'm like, what did the dwarves eat? They lived underground. What did they eat?
Bread.
How do you grow wheat? You live underground.
True.
Oh, it sounds like they just eat like.
So
that's true.
I talked about how technologically advanced they found ways to grow crops underground without the sun. They found ways to grow crops without the sun.
Bro, that's cool.
Yeah, so
that is.
The dwarves, a lot of times you're like, oh, they can't do magic, so they're not strong in society. And think about how the Teventers must have thought going down there, all these mages, and then these like 3-foot dudes come up to you and like, hey, we don't know magic, but we make golems.
Yeah.
So
hey, what's up? I got some burgers on the grill, man. Got this golem. What's up?
Got everything you need.
Everything you need, I got it, baby. What's up?
So the next, after we talk about the dwarves, we move into the darkspawn. Now, the darkspawn are just, think of demons for lack of a better word. They're not a demon in the context of this, but zombies, just an unrelenting force. The darkspawn are singular in their goal. Their goal is to start the next bite by finding the archdemon. That's what they want to do, and that's what they do. So they taint the old gods. So remember how I talked earlier about the Teventers kind of believed in the old gods, and then they came to the chantry? So the old gods, they're not believed in the land anymore. They were sealed away, and that's a story for another time. But when they are sealed away, the darkspawn, all they do is underground, they dig. And dig and dig and dig. And they hear a song consistently in their head. A calling. And it's consistently call them to dig towards the archdemon. The old gods. Once they find one, they find an old god, they infect it with the blight, and it becomes an archdemon. The archdemon is a hard ass. So the first archdemon, remember how we talked about the Teventers going into the Fade?
Right.
The one that led them was Archmage Dumat. Dumat took him into the Fade. The first archdemon was Dumat. He became the first archdemon. He was around for a very long time. They finally killed that archdemon on the Silent Plains. There was a battle there, and he was killed by the Grey Wardens. There have been 5 blights so far. The latest one was the one you played in Dragon Age Origins, and it was the shortest one also. It only lasted 2 years. Some people don't even believe it was a full-on blight.
Wait, so how long do these blights normally last?
Yeah.
Hundreds of years. The first blight was a very long time.
Jeez, could you imagine if the plague lasted hundreds of years and then kept coming back like a cold?
And think about it even like this. So with the blight, it brings the taint with it. So basically, think of like the plague, but with giant darkspawn trying to kill you every day, and unrelenting force. So the taint, the darkspawn, the reason why they are so just relentless is because they are infected with that taint. The taint does things to them that it's very powerful. It heals them.
Mm-hmm.
So if they would lose an arm in battle, they could regenerate that arm. It'd take time, but they could regenerate it. The taint feeds them, so they don't have to eat. It sustains them. But the only drawback that I know of the taint is that, one, kind of, the darkspawn aren't very intelligent. There are intelligent darkspawn, but they aren't necessarily intelligent. And also, they are weak during sunlight. So it's a lot easier to fight them on sunny days and stuff like that. They are spawned from what's known as brood mothers.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Wait, before we get on that, how does a darkspawn become intelligent?
Oh, I'll talk about that in just a minute. There are not many that do. I'll talk a little bit about it because I want to cover a process about that in another lore video. But there is a hierarchy in the darkspawn. And once darkspawn grow through the ranks, the higher they are, the more combat able they are, and it seems intelligence. But there's also an individual known as the Architect, and what his main goal was to give intelligence back to the darkspawn by severing the mental hold that the archdemon had on him. So basically, he thought doing that would give them back their intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
That's a whole different thing at a time. There are some darkspawn that are inherently more intelligent than others. There are even darkspawn that become so intelligent that they can use magic.
What kind of busted? Okay.
They're
Just
just
imagine you're fighting up against a zombie and he throws a fireball at you. You run.
So they'll use destruction magic. There's a bunch of schools of magic in Dragon Age, and we'll get into that at a different time. But the darkspawn, they practice what's called blight magic. And if you've ever played the game, the most annoying spell that the Hurlock emissaries, which is their mages, used was Crushing Prison. And it basically would lock you in the place and hold you there, while the rest of the darkspawn would just beat you up. You'd have to use a different character or dispel it. But
so you just have to stop playing that character.
You just gotta sit there, bro. You gotta
The spell has a time limit on it, and usually if you're playing the game well, you don't have to worry about getting beat while you're in there. But it was good.
You made it way like you will only keep use destruction magic. Don't worry. They just make sure you can't do anything.
You just be like, bro.
A blight magic. We'll talk about at another time about the different schools of magic, because I think that's a really interesting topic to go over. But brood mothers. So brood mothers are basically darkspawn females. Or regular females that they take and they feed darkspawn flesh and vomit to. And they continue to do that until the individual warps into this giant brood mother. Her goal is to just give birth to darkspawn.
Okay.
Hundreds and hundreds of darkspawn. So, if you are a human, you become a Hurlock. Dwarves become Genlocks. Elves become Sharlocks. And Kunari become Ogres.
These are all brood mothers, or
yes, and the type of spawn they have.
Okay.
Now, in the darkspawn culture, basically there's one leader, and it's the Archdemon. The Archdemon is Lord. But after that, they have a hierarchy. And in order to be at the top of the hierarchy, you have to fight for it. But the top is the alpha, and then even above that, there is an omega. And in the entire series, there's only been one omega you faced. And it was in a side mission. You could have missed it altogether. But those are considered on par with, hey, what the omega tells you is the same as what an archdemon tells you.
Oh, okay.
Then you have the alphas, and the alphas lead small groups. Then you have the emissaries. Those are the mages. And what they're doing is they are trying their best to lead small groups. So the Darkspawn team send a group together with what they know and what they like. They're trying to be the same as that. Now, when they are marching, it's said that the archdemon speaks to them telepathically. This is called the Song of Dragons. Basically, the archdemon's like, hey, we're going to do this, and that's what drives the Darkspawn. There was a while where there was a large gap between, I think it was between the third and the fourth blight, where there was 400 years between blights. So everybody thought the Darkspawn were defeated, the Darkspawn are dead. And then they came back again. And the issue with that is the only person that can slay a archdemon is a Grey Warden. If a normal person killed an archdemon, the soul of the archdemon would leave the archdemon and then find a new host and the archdemon again. But when a Grey Warden kills the archdemon, and it kills the Grey Warden. And he's destroyed. Which brings me to my boys, the Grey Wardens. The Grey Wardens are they are like a shock troop. Shock troopers, basically. So they come in and they just wreck shop on Darkspawn. That is their goal. They want to fight Darkspawn.
That was a SEAL Team 6, right?
Correct. They're in there to just beat up Darkspawn. Now, their origins, there are a bunch of different lore in the games that give them different origins. One was a guy named Carnius, and he was like, hey, you know, I gathered all these people together. We're going to go fight the Darkspawn. Another one, there's a guy named Ander, and he was like, hey, you know, we got this group of individuals together, and we're going to do this. There is nothing that says, hey, this is exactly how they were formed. But we do know that they were formed. And the first time... Oh, go ahead.
So basically what it sounds like is the Grey Warden just like kind of appeared because there was a need for a sort of good side to the everything that was bad.
Kind of. Every one of them talks about a meeting of individuals. So every one of their origin stories says, hey, a group of people met up and from that formed the Darkspawn. Even in the dwarves, or the Grey Wardens, even the dwarves, there were dwarven paragons who were in the first Grey Wardens.
So in other words, get your squad together and you can be a Grey Warden.
That's right.
Did they confirm if the groups that were all mentioned were comprised of the same people? Or is there any theories like that there are different groups that all formed around this time period and then all of them like became Grey Wardens?
With that, the Grey Wardens, they are sure that that's when they formed, but they flew under the Grey Warden banner because one of the original Grey Wardens, she basically was from the mountains, and in the mountains they were griffins. She taught the original Grey Wardens how to ride griffins into battle. Yeah. So the Grey Wardens took their name from the Grey of the Griffins. In order to join the Grey Wardens, it's pretty simple. The Grey Wardens said this: we don't care who you are, where you're from, what you have done. All you got to do, you got to come to us. We're gonna do the joining ritual, which
What is
not
this, a Backstreet Boys song?
not a very high success rate for the joining ritual. You have to drink darkspawn blood and survive the taint.
Oh.
And
is that all?
And then
Yeah,
your life is
can't
pretty
find
much
that.
timed from that point out. So you're consistently dying from that point out because you've been infected by the darkspawn. But it's got some pretty sweet trade-offs. You hear the song, the calling. You gain increased strength, agility. You got to ride on the back of griffins. That's pretty sweet. You had to throw off all your worldly concerns as a Grey Warden. You were no longer connected to this world. You were connected to one thing: killing the Archdemon.
So you have to, A, get superpowers, B, not get the plague. But when you get superpowers, you become a Tibetan monk? Why do I need superpowers?
So, think about it this way.
Okay.
When the Grey Wardens first came out, it was such a high honor to be a part of them that they had plenty of recruits. Because it was like, these were known as the original tough guys. Like, if you were a great fighter, you're going to go be a Grey Warden. Because your body, you're going to withstand it, and then you are going to do great things. But, there
So
are
what
some
we're saying
things.
is that if you have, basically we're saying that if you have a high immune system, you could be a Grey Warden.
Pretty much.
I had plenty of orange juice this morning. Think I'm going to go be a Grey Warden today.
I mean,
Exactly.
that's a lot of it, to be 100% honest with you. Now, just imagine, though. Think of what people must thought. So there was a battle, and they had been fighting the Darkspawn for years. Like, I'm pretty sure, like, they were fighting Darkspawn for 300 years. The first, it might have been, 300 years. So the very first time Grey Wardens figured out how to do the joining and got it, they're in the middle of a fight at Norbotten, and the Darkspawn had been winning because nobody knew, like, hey, we can't kill the Archdemon. They just keep making more Darkspawn. And out of nowhere, a group of Grey Wardens flies in on the back of griffins, dismounts off the griffins, and it's said that the Grey Wardens are fighting 10 to 20 Darkspawn each at a time and winning. Because the Darkspawn can't sense Grey Wardens because they smell just like them. Painted. So the Grey Wardens are just destroying them. And they rode in on griffins. Could you imagine if you're just a low-class peasant with your sword, and this dude comes flying in on a griffin, backflips off that, and, like, beheads 10 Darkspawn right in front of you?
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, I'm like...
Just imagine if you knew the guy.
Yeah.
Like, oh, there goes Jeremy. Oh, God, look at Jeremy go!
He's the man.
Saw him this morning drinking orange juice. What happened?
People were like, man, these Grey Wardens are amazing. So the Grey Wardens used that, and they did some things. They were like, hey, we're going to stay out of political stuff, but we need you to keep giving us recruits. So a lot of times, individuals have a choice. Hey, you stole? Well, I know you stole, but maybe you come be a Grey Warden, and we'll forget about you stealing.
Like, hey,
So-
so either jail or Grey Warden, which one do you want?
Yeah. Now,
Imagine if you stole something and they're like, hey, do you want to be the magic police or do you want to go to jail?
Magic Police
guess-
it is.
I guess I'll go be a police officer somehow.
So the cities knew this, so the Grey Wardens asked for what's called as the right of conscription. And the right of conscription was signed by everybody in the land, and basically it said this: if the Grey Wardens came to you and said, you're a Grey Warden now, that's the law. They can do it to anyone. Now, they didn't just go and do it to kings and stuff like that because there was political issues, and at the time that would not be good. But there were plenty of times where they're like, hey, I'm going to take this prisoner, and they're going to become a Grey Warden. Or, hey, I'm going to take this gladiator, he's going to become a Grey Warden. Because they need to keep growing their ranks.
Be like, hey.
Unfortunately, so remember we talked about that really long gap between Blight.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Well, during this time, the Grandmaster Grey Warden, the top, her name was Sophia Dryden. She used to be an heir to the political house of Ferelden. Well, the Grey Wardens have been known to stay out of battles. So they don't get into political conflicts. So much so that when the Qunari invaded, which were a tribe of war-seeking people up north, really interesting stuff on the Qunari, that the Grey Wardens stayed out of it, and a lot of people in Ferelden were really mad about that. They're like, hey, we needed your help, but you guys didn't act. And they said, we don't get into that kind of stuff. We're not in politicals. Unfortunately, Sophia Dryden decided, you know what? I have just as much claim to the throne as the individual who has it. So she took the Grey Wardens and used them as an army, a militant force, to try to take the throne of Ferelden. Didn't go well. She got captured. She got killed. The Grey Wardens actually got banished from Ferelden.
Wait, how did it not go well? What happened?
Well,
I thought they were magic and powerful.
Well, think about it. You have 400 years. Who's going to recruit to be a Grey Warden if your great uncle doesn't even remember the last blight?
True.
I was about to say, do the races live as long as they do in regular folklore? Because elves live several centuries.
We're gonna talk about that when we talk about elves. So Grey Wardens, anybody though, anyone can be a Grey Warden, no matter the race, what you did in life, you could be a Grey Warden. So even some of the most famous Grey Wardens, which we'll probably talk about that in another episode, but one of the founding Grey Wardens I told you was a dwarf. An elf Grey Warden killed the 3rd or 4th archdemon. Anybody could be a Grey Warden. But after they got banished, there was problems. So the next blight came up and there weren't a lot of Grey Wardens to fight it. So they put down the rebellion pretty quick, and it was killed by a Grey Warden. But the Grey Wardens to this point in the game, they've begun to disappear. We don't know where they went. It even so much talks so your Warden from Dragon Age 1, known as the Warden, when you take Inquisition, you don't know where your Warden is. You align yourself with a Warden in one of the games. His name's Blackwall. If you continue in the game, there's Codex, and we don't know where Blackwall went. All the Wardens in Ferelden are starting to disappear. Warden camps are found unmanned. We don't know where they're going. We have no idea. There are a lot of theories and lore on that, and I don't want to get into those right now, but they're really interesting. The last thing I'll tell you about the Grey Wardens is, so you get infected with the taint. The blight comes inside you. Eventually, you're going to turn into a ghoul, which is basically a human that is starting to decompose, and then eventually you become a darkspawn. So there's something called the Calling, and the reason why the Grey Wardens and the dwarves are so well known and so happy together is that when a warden starts to hear the calling, so when you first take the joining, it's like a low hum, and you could always ignore it, but then it consistently gets louder. It's like a voice in your head, and louder and louder. So eventually they know, hey, it's time. So the warden will take their weapons, they'll walk into Orzammar, they'll open the gate to the Deep Roads, and they'll go into the Deep Roads. That's where they'll die, fighting as many Darkspawn as they can, in order to escape the fate of becoming a Darkspawn themselves. Some Wardens actually become Darkspawn. It happens because they don't want to die in the Calling. It's just something that happens over time. But being a Grey Warden, it's a great thing until you realize that a lot of the lands and a lot of the people don't respect the Wardens anymore because of the political decisions that they made and what's happened to them in the past. So much so that in Dragon Age 1, you're led by an individual named Duncan, and Duncan is the first time a Grey Warden captain is allowed back in Ferelden. and it didn't go too well for him. The last race I want to go over is the elves, and we're not going to talk a lot about the elves because the elves need their own video about their religion and what their religion has done. But the elves were basically the first people here. They used to live forever. They were immortal. Then the humans showed up. They called the humans the quick ones because we died fast. They begin to intermingle with us and they'd have children. Well, what they found out is when they put themselves next to us, they begin to age and die. So the elves distanced. They ran away. Well, as humans do, we saw this as our opportunity to take this land. So we basically took the entirety of the land from the Dales, or the Elvish. Because, you know, hey, they can't fight us. They're afraid. They go on. So the elves have been just pushed back, and they live in slums. They're slaves a lot of the time now. They have lost almost all of their culture. They have nothing left. And to be an elf in this age, in this land, is looked down upon. Nobody cares for them.
What?
Yeah.
I was like, there was some kind of jump here where it was like, oh yeah, they're immortal. Also, nobody likes them.
They think about it. Think of you, somebody came to your land, you're like, wow, these people, the elves used to do magic, and the magic that we're able to do as human is said to be nothing compared to what the elves used to do. They said that a single spell from an elf could echo on for a millennia. Yet our magic, I mean, we can't even get into the Fade. The elven magic created the Fade. So, unfortunately for us, we saw them, we know their power, but guess what?
We some haters.
We just took and took and took, and we kept marching on them. And now the elves have nothing, so they live in small alienages all across the land, and they're consistently on the edge of extinction. That's something that they've got to worry about. Now, there are, of course, a couple other things that would be great to talk about, but there's only so much time with each episode, and some things that would really be good to get into one day I'd love to tell you more about the Qunari, which the Qunari they're a warlike society, and their belief is simplicity. Think of badass Amish. Basically,
I was
they
like,
have...
oh, he's probably going to mention, Amazons. The Amish. Ah, yes. The other war society.
I guess Amazon would be good as well. But think about it. They have three leaders in the Qunari. And one deals with normal day goings, religion, and then the final one believes he is the Lord of War, the Arishok. And that's a bad man. The Circle of Magi will be great to cover one day. The Circle of Magi is the one who takes in those who can do magic, and it basically teaches them and controls them. There's
controls them bad or good?
Depends on the circle, really.
Oh no. An angry circle.
After going all that, one thing that's paramount to Dragon Age is your choices matter. What you does matters. So, my question for you guys. When you play a game where your decisions determine the outcome of the game, do you always play good guy? Or do you toe the line? Or bad guy? What do you guys do?
I'll go first. I'm always evil. I'm like... okay, that's not fair. I will almost always have more fun with evil than I will good, because goody two-shoe stuff is always so much work. Where it's like, my lost kitty is up in the tree. Please go spend time collecting all the wood to build the ladder to break him down. It's like, couldn't I just chop down this tree? No, fuck you. Like,
that's right.
Oh wait, are we allowed to curse? I didn't even think about that.
You are now.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, we can bleep that out, but And then you're just like, if you're a bad guy, you like, well, I don't want to do that. So you like, you can, and then you just get like a choice of like, turning the cat magical and evil, and like you just do whatever you want. Like you don't even have to be evil. You just be like a jerk. And I like to live vicariously through those characters.
I get it.
And I'm probably on a list now, but that's fine.
You know, I took a psychology class for video game psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a book by a lady named Jane McGonigal. It's called Reality is Broken. And part of the book, she talks about in video games, when given the choice to do good or evil, we become our ideal version of ourselves when making that choice. Well, that's something to think about. That's something to think about there.
Well, we already know who's going to be a villain. Me personally, it depends on the story, because I've played games where I've been happy to play the good guy, and there's other ones where I'm like, oh hell no, I'm kicking his ass. Like nah, nah. I'm blowing.
What's
kind
the
of
meme? Making a lot of good points there.
Yeah, like Infamous, for what you call it. It was some part in that game where I'm just like, no, I'm about to electrocute everybody here.
Yeah.
Everybody catching. Everybody about to get this electricity. Everybody getting it.
Yeah.
Did either of you ever play? Oh no, go ahead.
No, I'll say other parts is like, okay, well, I'm not gonna do something bad because they don't deserve it. Like with the
Did you ever play Undertale? Either of you?
I haven't.
No. Okay. So the main selling point of Undertale is it's an RPG where you have the good choice, the neutral choice, and you have the bad choice. And I couldn't finish the bad choice. And it's like, really, that's my only like choice-based experience with this kind of genre. But I think this is more of like what I think it was Slip said. It really depends on the game.
Yeah.
But like that game, and I'm not sure how Dragon Age treats it. Like, does Dragon Age make you feel like a jerk if you decide to make like evil choices?
If you make evil choices, you will get evil outcomes. So you decide to slaughter a village. It's always
every even-brained person does. They're like, oh yes, look at that very slaughterable village.
In the original Dragon Age, there's a choice. You are building an army basically, and there's a point where you have to choose who you're going to side with. You can side with the werewolves, who have been killing elves, or you can side with the elves, and that pretty much eradicates the werewolves. So you got to make a decision there. And once you make the decision, it has a drastic impact on what happens in the rest of the game.
Okay.
Ooh.
So, what questions you guys have? Do you guys have anything that you want to know more about?
Oh, Jesus Christ, there's so much to go over. I don't even know what the hell... It's like math class. I don't even know what I don't know.
I just want to make an honorable mention that one of the funniest lines, and I'm probably going to show my morality by how it was so funny to me. I remember my first playthrough of Dragon Age, and when I get into the next town, it was this kid, and it'll always be right outside. And the first thing you see when you walk, first thing you hear in the background when you walk up is, "It's cold out there." And I just thought that to be so, because it was just like out of nowhere, nobody's talking about anything. He just comes out of nowhere. "It's cold out there."
It's really passive aggressive, like a beggar's like, "Boy, it sure is cold out here. You look like you're pretty warm though. Where do you do your shopping?"
I was just like, bruh, what? Shut up.
When I went through the very first game, I played as an elf, and I don't usually play as elves in games, and I usually don't play as archers either, but I was like, hey, I'm going to play as an elven archer this time, because every time I play an RPG different, I try to play a different class, because I want to experience that. And I remember I was talking to one of the first people you have to make a choice on, and the guy's like, "What are you looking at, knife ears?" And I was like, oh, we're going to talk to me that way? Okay, well, I'm not helping you, and that's how I played my whole playthrough. I didn't help that person.
He's like, "Oh, you
All
got
right.
the nerve
I was like,
to insult me?
all
All right, bitch."
That's what we're gonna do. That's what we're gonna do.
You sit there the whole game, watch him die. Like,
Got him, boys.
Soon.
Yeah.
I'll wait.
So,
I got time.
do you have what questions do you have, Crash?
Well, a lot of the stuff I was gonna ask about, you were like, "Oh, we'll talk about this another time." So,
Okay.
how many Dragon Age games are there, and are they all interconnected?
There are 3, and
Okay.
yes, they're all interconnected. Actually, you start the story in Dragon Age Origins. You continue the world in Dragon Age 2. Continue the world in Dragon Age 3. There's also a movie and a book, and then there's a bunch of lore along that as well.
There's a movie.
The movie is about the Seekers.
The what?
The Seekers. Remember I told you the kind of strong arm for the Chantry?
Yes.
About one of those individuals.
Okay.
I think it's on Netflix. It was for a while. Writing down that.
All right. Hop on Netflix and check right now.
So, if you guys have any questions or comments for the video, or you just want to know anything, or maybe I told you guys something wrong, you find that out. That's a possibility as well. Go ahead and get at us. This has been episode 2 of Nerdlore. This is Shiny Shoes.
This is Slip.
And I'm Crashstarling.
Have a good one, y'all.